Today we are comparing these two very budget-oriented wheel sets to the much more expensive wheel set to my left to find out what are you actually getting when you're spending that much more money. Specifically, we're talking about Carbon race wheels. Now, I have 3 sets of Carbon race wheels that we're going to be testing at 3 very different price points. And we're going to start on the low end here. We have this entry-level offering from Super Team. These are their Classic Pros, $520 bargain price. Next up, we have Super Team's $1,300 all Carbon EVOs. And then at the top spec, already mounted on the bike here, wheels get more expensive than this. These cost about $2,000. I think you can find them maybe for $1,900. The Shimano Durace C50s. And we're gonna go out and we're gonna do aero testing. And we're gonna answer the question, which of these is the fastest? Which one is the most aerodynamic? But before we do that, I'm gonna do something of a teardown, talk about the standout features from each of these wheel sets, because it turns out there's more to a wheel set than just how fast it is. You also have things like durability and serviceability. I mean, what good are really fast wheels if they're not gonna last a long time, right? Or if you can't repair them, it doesn't make much sense. So anyway, we're gonna start with the Classic Pros. These are $520. I wish these things existed when I first started riding bikes because the only option I had was like $2,000. So that's kind of what's driving this video to begin with, is I didn't know when I first started riding bikes, specifically when I first started racing bikes, do I need carbon wheels to win races? Like, I kept thinking that was the case. Turns out you don't. But I've always wondered, like, how much do you need to spend on this stuff? So anyway, that's the motivation for this video. Let's get into these wheels here though, because these are like the Classic Pros. They are classic in every way. The shape here is a very... This is what everything looks like nowadays. The shape of this rim. You don't have those sharp edges anymore like they used to make them. These have standard steel spokes. They are 28 millimeters wide on the outside, and then on the interior they are 21 millimeters. And actually that's true across all these wheels. 28 outside, 21 inside, and that's gonna make the testing so much more valuable because they're all the same. Of course, these are 45 millimeters deep. The other Super Teams are 45, and then the C50s from Shimano are 50. So there's a little bit of a difference in depth there. We're gonna find out if that makes a difference in the actual performance. But as for these Classic Pro 45s, nothing really out of the ordinary here, to be honest. They weigh 1,470 grams, and they have a bunch of spokes. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. You know, one thing I noticed is none of the spokes are touching. That's a good sign, especially when we get onto the higher end wheels. When you have carbon spokes that are touching, that could be a problem. You get a little bit of grit in there, they start wearing, it could become compromised. I know that the technology has come a long way. A lot of mainstream brands are now using carbon spokes. But like I said in a previous video, there's something to be said for these standard steel spokes. You can find them just about anywhere. They do have spoke holes underneath this rim tape, which comes pre-applied, so you don't have to worry about going tubeless. These are tubeless ready with the rim tape applied, and they're easy to service. You can access the spoke nipples through these bored holes in the rim bed, and then of course you can adjust the tension here at the standard spot. Let's talk about the free hub for a minute. Well, the hub in general. Let's talk about the hub. These have ceramic bearings inside. I'm not crazy. I think it's a marketing buzzword, ceramic. I think steel's fine. They may be a little bit harder. They can break easier. People don't talk about that. But with these cartridge-style bearings, there's really never any problems. And when there is a problem, you just swap the whole thing out for a new set. But that's pretty rare. The free hub, on the other hand, well, actually, let's talk about the shell first. Yeah, it says ceramic here. 11 or 12 speed, of course. We're using 12 speed for the testing later, so hopefully be compatible with that. But this should just pop off. See if we can get it to pop off. Yep, there it is. So we'll take a closer look here, and these are Paul style bearings. These are, again, Classic Pro. These are a classic style for a free hub. There are 3 engagement points, not many, but this is just like a very, I wonder if these are They say ceramic. I wonder if the bearings inside the free hub are ceramic as well. Doesn't really matter, but I'm just kind of curious. It just says ceramic. These are their in-house bearings, by the way. And then you can see the engagement points are on the inside of the actual hub shell here. So you can learn more about how these pawls work, but this is a standard design. You can just pop this back on. Pretty easy to service if something goes wrong. But again, these aren't super exciting. So we are actually going to move on to the next wheel set. Okay, on to the $1,300 Super Team all carbon EVOs. Of course, those were all carbon as well, but these are all carbon because the spokes are bladed carbon, and you can see right away. There's a lot more time and money put into the fit and finish of this wheel set. Let's talk about what that actually means though. Aside from like, oh yeah, it looks nice, I like it. It's got this gloss finish. It's got these dimples, and it's got kind of this like, you know, golf ball sort of thing going on. I'm sure that they claim there's some performance associated aerodynamically with how this is designed. We're gonna test that claim, but these certainly appear more premium. Weight-wise, they are 1,430 grams, so it's only 40 grams lighter than the wheel set that costs $520 at the same depth. This is also a 45 millimeter deep carbon wheel set, 21 millimeter inside width, inner width of the rim, and then a 28 millimeter outside width, just like the other wheels. We already talked about that. So what else are you getting? So there's another feature here which I found kind of interesting, is like, where's the rim tape? You're looking for the rim tape. Well, there is no rim tape because these are holeless. They're designed this way. The rim bed is like enclosed. So it's nice because you don't have to ever worry about putting on rim tape. But the question becomes like, what happens if you break one of these spokes and you have to install a new spoke? It comes with additional spokes, by the way. We're going to talk a lot more about these spokes because I think that's the defining feature of this wheel set. But the problem is like, it's a nightmare because you have to go in through the valve hole with a magnet, and it is a pain to try to replace a spoke if you have a problem with one of your spokes. Now, I have had problems in the past with carbon spokes, so it's left a sour taste in my mouth, but I know the technology's come a long way. But look at these chonky boys. I mean, these are 5 millimeters wide, and they are less than 1 millimeter thick. That's something that they don't talk about very much, but these are less than 1 millimeter thick. These things are like blades. Like, this could be dangerous. Somebody puts their hand in there in a race or in a crash during a race or something. Like, these are kind of gnarly. Do they make the wheel more aerodynamic? I don't know. We're going to test that claim, just like we're going to test the claim of this interesting texture on the side of the wheel here. But let's get into the hub, particularly the free hub, because these, just like the other ones, are their in-house brand, labeled Super Team here, and they come with ceramic bearings. But the free hub design is different. This is a star ratchet design. So we slide this off. I am very fond of this design. This was pioneered by DT Swiss. The way I understand it is their patent ran out, so now these other companies can just use this technology, this design, which is really pretty cool. I realize that I'm gonna have to take B-roll of this. So hopefully, as you're listening to my voice right now, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. And there are these star ratchets, which increase the number of engagement points. Now, I'm not gonna spend a 30-minute video here talking about free hubs. I certainly could. Shout out Masterclass if you want to learn more about the specifics of equipment and why I choose it. But the really high level thing here is I like this design. It's much more simple. I've never had a failure on the star ratchet like I have with the Paul design. It's got one spring, and what's cool is you saw how quickly I just took this apart. You can swap out these little star ratchets here now for really cheap third-party ones that aren't DT Swiss if you want even more engagement points. This is important for mountain biking, but this is also important for crit racing. You think about how quickly you want to grab that gear coming out of a corner. The quicker you can grab the gear, the faster you can get back on the power, the faster you're gonna be in general. So I really like this design. I'm super, super stoked to see that these other non-DT Swiss brands are now picking up this technology and implementing them on much cheaper alternatives to these mainstream brands. But I think that the biggest thing to talk about on this wheel set, just kind of saving the best for last here, is the spokes. Like, these spokes are insane. We talked about their dimensions. One thing I wanted to do is show you guys what I do when I get a new wheel set and I want to make sure that things are copacetic and it's sent to me the way it was supposed to be. I'm not a wheel builder by any means, but you don't need to be to figure out kind of like the quick and dirty of what makes a wheel set well designed. And one thing you can do is just grab a piece of paper here and just make sure these aren't touching. These are getting closer to touching compared to their little brother, the Classic Pros. But as you can see, none of these are touching. And this is particularly important, like I said, with carbon spokes, because a little bit of grit gets in there, and when these things are less than 1 millimeter thick, they can snap pretty easily if they become compromised. So it's good to see that these are designed well, they're not touching, but what about tension? Now this is the part where I realize there are tools to do a better job, but the first thing I do is just give it the old feel test, and if something's really out of whack, you'll know right away. But then, the reason I grabbed this, don't use the metal side, but something plastic, you can... Oh. So it sounds to me like that one is a little bit not as tight as the others. Another small thing you can do, it's like the coin trick. If you've been in a crash on a carbon race bike, you can tap the frame, and if you hear a dud, you probably have compromised the carbon. It's a kind of a similar trick. It's by no means conclusive, but it gives you a good idea if something is grossly wrong with your wheel set. Now I'll turn it around, and we'll do the other side. Fewer spokes on this side. And also you'll notice that the sound is a lot different. There's always a lot less tension on the non-drive side spokes. So the final thing you can do, obviously, is just mount the wheel onto your bike and then see if it runs true. I've already done that for all of these wheels, and they all run true on the bike, perfectly smooth and true, and then also the spokes have all looked really good out of box. So kudos to Super Team for coming out with good wheels. I'm gonna do that after I stop talking, because these suckers are loud. That's the other thing with the Star ratchet system, is the free hub is loud. So for like 20 or 30 bucks, you can get different Star ratchets, pop them in there, and it'll be even more obnoxiously loud if that's your thing. So those are the Super Team all carbon EVOs. Let's talk about the Shimano's next. Shimano Durace C50s are a standard. They have been around forever, and they are proven. I mean, they are used by professional teams, Ineos, FDJ, I think. There are a number of World Tour professional teams that use these wheels and have success on these wheels. So I think that that's part of what you're paying for. Let's be honest. You're paying for these wheels to be ridden by other pros because that's part of their marketing program. Let's just speak the truth here. But let's get into the nitty-gritty on why these cost so much. These are $2,000, but you know, at first glance, these aren't a whole lot different than the $500 Super Teams that we first talked about. We're looking at this very kind of standard rim profile shape that is pretty much ubiquitous, other than the kind of weird examples, which we'll talk more about, the Super Teams, after we do the testing. But other than that, these are a little bit deeper than the other two. These are 50 instead of the 45s. So there's a little bit more carbon there. And as a result, these actually weigh a bit more. These are 1,530 grams compared to, in case you forgot, the 1,430 on the EVOs, the all carbon EVOs, and the 1,470. So these are heavier, but there's a bit more carbon there. They also don't really have any exotic materials. These, again, just like the entry-level Super Teams, have stainless steel spokes and a very familiar pattern here. And these roll true, they came fine. That's another thing, is like Shimano is this very well-known brand. There's gonna be some quality control assurance once they send these to you. Although, in defense of Super Team, all of these wheels came great when I first got them. So, what else is special about these wheels? Not much. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. These are already mounted up, obviously, you can see, so I'm not going to take them apart like I did the other ones. One thing I will mention is these also have a Star Ratchet free hub. Actually, it's a little bit different. It's what Shimano calls a direct engagement free hub, but it's essentially a Star Ratchet. And then these also have a different style bearing. Instead of cartridge bearing for the hub itself, these are cup and cone. So, super short version again, not gonna get into it, is these are an older technology that Shimano has clung to for decades, for probably 50 years or something. Somebody will let me know in the comments how long that's been around, but they are easier to service. I always suggest cup and cone and Shimano wheels in general, not necessarily their high-end Durace ones, but just even alloy wheels sold by Shimano, because they all come standard with this cup and cone style, where if you have to fully service the hub, it's very easy to do so. You can even buy the individual bearings and put new bearings in there if you wish. With cartridge style hub bearings, you are just replacing everything. If there's a problem, you're not like taking apart a cartridge style bearing because you'll destroy it in the process. So what you end up having to do is just replace the whole thing if there's a small problem. One of the good things is this is more serviceable, and if you're doing a lot of training, especially in really challenging conditions, this might be a better option. We're gonna get more into that later on when we're starting to look at the performance of the wheels in addition to what you're getting, but that's kind of big picture for the Shimano Durace C50. So next what I want to do is I want to mount these wheels on the bike, and you guys know the routine here. We're doing the same bike, the Scott back there, with the same power meter in the same position, and we have wheels with the same outer width, inner width, and we are going to be using the same tires. I'm mounting the same tires, so we're really leaving nothing to chance here. We're eliminating all the variables. We're gonna find out which wheel set is actually fastest, so hang in there. I'm gonna do some testing. We're gonna get back with results. All right, it's the next morning. We are ready to do some testing. I'm very caffeinated, and we're gonna start with the Durace C50s because they're already put on this bike. But as a reminder, same bike, same power meter. I'm even gonna swap the same tires, cassette, and rotor in between runs. So we are isolating the wheels is the only change. So wish me luck, guys. I'm gonna run some tests. See you in a minute. All right, we are back from testing, and I'm not gonna tease you guys with it. Let's just get into the results right away. And I have notes here, but my editor's gonna put something fancy on the screen for you guys. There's not much to say, to be honest. 22.5 miles an hour average, 22.4, 22.3. These are all within, you can see 1231, 1235, 1239, all within single digit seconds of each other. Same power meter, same bike, same position. You guys know the drill. So what does this mean? There isn't a huge aerodynamic advantage among all these wheels. So then this brings us back to the original question. What are you paying for when you're spending 3, 4, maybe even 5 times as much for one of these high-end wheel sets? I have a hot take I was thinking about while I was out there testing. Part of what you're paying for is the pros use it. The pros use it, so if it's good enough for Ineos Grenadiers, it's good enough for me. That's a powerful, very powerful marketing message, but it is still a marketing message, so they pay for that. So let's think about what the pros use. First of all, pros don't care about how much equipment costs, right? They're not paying for it. In fact, it's the opposite. They're getting paid to use it. It's a sponsorship. So they don't care how much it costs, and here's the hot take. They also don't really care how it performs. Let me explain. They're a business. Let's take Ineos Grenadiers, for example. It could be any team. They have, 15 riders, 20 riders on their roster. They have probably 100 staff members on their roster. They have team cars, they have hotels, they have airfare, they have all of these costs. They're a business, right? They're a for-profit business. They have to take care of all these people. Salaries for athletes, insane. So when they are striking deals with these companies, they're not like thinking, what's the most performance-based wheel? We don't care if we're not making any money. Well, this organization, this enterprise, wouldn't exist without money coming in from sponsors. So that's a long-winded way of me saying that basically take that marketing message with a grain of salt, because I don't think there's a huge difference between these not so well-known brands and the really high-end brands. Let's break down each of these wheels. I want to talk about my suggestion based on what we learned from the aerodynamic testing, what we learned from the breakdown on the desk back there, and then also kind of with this idea in mind that just because pros use it doesn't mean it's necessarily the most cost-effective or even performant wheel set. So right off the bat, out of these three, what's my recommendation, my suggestion? What do I think is the best value? Well, it's a no-brainer. It's the Classic Pros. They performed essentially the same as these other ones. You know, they don't have the star ratchet. That's probably the biggest knock I would give to the Classic Pros. They don't have the star ratchet, which I like, but they're $520, you guys. And performance-wise, yeah, this isn't sat in a wind tunnel with every variable perfectly controlled, but I think this gives you a very good idea of where we're at in terms of performance. And the Classic Pros impressed. You could buy almost four Classic Pros for the cost of one Durace C50. You could buy two Classic Pros, put tires and tubes on them, performance tires and tubes, for the same cost as the all Carbon EVOs. So I think the Classic Pros are a no-brainer because of the cost to performance calculation. The C50s, on the opposite end of the spectrum, close to $2,000, they might be an attractive option for you if you are really, really looking at marginal gains. They are faster, not by much, but if you're really kind of stretching everything else thin and you're really looking for marginal gains, they might be a good option. And let's not forget the cup and cone bearings might be something that is really attractive for you. We talked about it in the breakdown, but if you're doing a ton of miles, and if you are kind of a handyman, you like taking apart stuff and fixing it yourself, you're racing and riding in a lot of like rainy, muddy, gravelly, disgusting conditions, then that might be a good option for you. Otherwise, yeah, I don't see a place for the all Carbon EVOs. I think that the really thick spokes, the holeless design, the dimples, all that stuff is just pure marketing. It doesn't make you faster. If you like the way they look, cool, go for it. If it makes you ride more, cool, go for it. But again, Classic Pros for $520. Never thought I'd be saying I'm recommending a $520 set of one of these Chinese wheel set companies. But guys, they're just getting a lot better. So anyway, want to thank Super Team again for sending the wheels for this breakdown, these tests. And if you guys like this type of content, then be sure to get subscribed. Let me know down in the comments what you would like me to test next. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.